Naledi was only 16 when her mother died. She was heartbroken and scared. Her aunt, Nomvula, held her close and promised, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." Naledi trusted her. But what she didn't know was that behind her kind words, Nomvula was hiding a dark secret. Just days after the funeral, Nomvula paid a crooked lawyer in Bulawayo to hide Naledi's inheritance, 15 acres of ancestral land that her mother had left in Naledi's name. Instead of protecting Naledi's future, Nomvula took everything. For years she told Naledi there was nothing left. Meanwhile, she secretly leased the land to rich farmers and used the money to live a luxury life. Big house, fancy clothes, expensive parties. Naledi had no idea. She believed her aunt. But then, one quiet afternoon, while cleaning a dusty shelf in Nomvula's house, she found an old envelope. Inside was a file with land papers, her name written clearly, her mother's signature still visible. At first, she thought it was a mistake. But then she saw forged documents dated just 1 month after the funeral. Her hands began to shake. In that moment, she knew the truth. Her whole life had been a lie. But now, the fight for justice had begun. One hot afternoon, the power had gone out again, and Naledi was cleaning her aunt's house to pass the time. She wasn't looking for anything, just dusting old shelves and rearranging boxes in the back room. This room was always locked when she was younger, but that day, the door was open. As she moved some old books aside, something strange caught her eye. A worn, brown envelope half buried under a pile of newspapers. It looked forgotten, almost hidden. She pulled it out slowly, her fingers already dusty. There was no label, no name, just an old, crumpled envelope that felt heavier than it looked. Curious, she opened it. Inside, her heart skipped. There were papers, old, yellowing land documents. She sat down on the floor, confused. The name on the top page was hers, Naledi Dube. Below, her mother's signature, strong, clear, the same one she remembered from school report cards and birthday letters. Naledi stared at it. For a few seconds, she couldn't breathe. Why were these here? Why had she never seen them before? She kept reading, flipping through the pages slowly, carefully. That's when she saw something else. A transfer of ownership document. But this one was strange. It was dated just 1 month after her mother's funeral. The signature on this document was shaky, almost like someone trying to copy her mother's handwriting. Something cold moved through her body. The papers told a different story from what she had always been told. All her life, her aunt had told her that nothing was left. The land is gone, she had said. There were debts. Your mother left us with nothing. Naledi had believed her. She had cried over it, grieved it, and moved on, or at least tried to. But now, sitting on the dusty floor with papers that said otherwise, she felt the ground shift under her. Her hands were shaking. She couldn't understand how someone she had trusted, someone who had raised her like a mother, could do this to her. She remembered her aunt's expensive clothes, the shiny car, the trips to town, the new furniture that arrived every year. She used to think her aunt was lucky. Now she saw the truth. That money had come from her land, from what was meant to be her future. That night, Naledi didn't sleep. She waited until the house was quiet. Her aunt was snoring softly in the next room. Carefully, silently, Naledi took out her phone and snapped photos of every single document, page by page. She didn't take the envelope with her. She knew her aunt would notice, but she made sure the photos were clear, saved them twice, and even sent copies to her own email, just in case. Then she packed a small bag with her clothes and a notebook. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't leave a note. She just walked out, her heart short pounding in her chest, and didn't look back. The night was still. No dogs barked. The stars were bright above her, but Naledi felt like she was walking through darkness. She took a bus early the next morning, using the little money she had saved from her weekend job. Her destination was Lusaka, where an old friend had offered her a place to stay a while back. She hadn't planned to leave this way, but something had changed inside her. This wasn't just about stolen land anymore. This was about a stolen life. On the bus, she stared out of the window and thought about her mother, her soft voice, her stories about the land, how she used to say, "One day, This land will be yours. Naledi felt tears slide down her cheeks. She whispered, I'm sorry it took me so long to see. But deep inside, something else had started to grow. Not just sadness, but fire. In Lusaka, she stayed on a friend's couch. It was crowded and noisy, but it felt like freedom. She got a job waitressing at a small cafe and worked late-night shift. During the day, she enrolled in an online law course. She didn't tell anyone about the documents at first. She kept quiet, studied hard, and slowly began to build her case. Every night, when her shift ended, she read legal books and articles about land rights and inheritance fraud. She joined forums and emailed lawyers for advice. She even visited NGOs that worked on land justice cases and asked questions, careful not to reveal too much. Every small detail, every note she took, brought her closer to the truth and to her next step. She wasn't the same scared girl who found those papers. Now she was planning, watching, waiting, preparing for the day she would return home, not just to ask for justice, but to demand it. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Her aunt had power, money, and connections. But Naledi had something stronger now. She had the truth, and she wasn't afraid anymore. Naledi arrived in Lusaka with just a small bag, a phone full of photos, and a heart full of pain. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do, but she knew she couldn't stay quiet anymore. A childhood friend, Chippo, gave her a place to sleep, a small mattress on the floor of a one-room flat. It wasn't much, but to Naledi, it felt like a new beginning. She found a job as a waitress in a busy cafe downtown. The hours were long and the pay was low, but she didn't complain. Every night she wiped tables, served coffee, smiled at customers, and kept her secret close to her heart. By day, she transformed into a student. She enrolled in an online law course using an old laptop that froze every few hours. But Naledi didn't give up. She spent every spare moment reading about inheritance laws, land rights, and fraud. She learned legal words she had never heard before. She watched videos, wrote notes, and studied real cases like hers. She taught herself how the system worked and how it could be used to fight back. She told no one what she was doing, not even Chippo. For 4 long years, Naledi kept her silence. People thought she was just a quiet girl working hard to survive in the city. But secretly, she was building a case, brick by brick. Late at night, after her shifts, she emailed lawyers and human rights workers using a free internet cafe. Some replied with advice, others ignored her, but a few listened. She met quietly with land reform advocates and legal aid groups. They couldn't represent her yet, but they guided her. One told her, keep gathering evidence. One day it will matter. So that's what she did. She returned quietly to her home village a few times, acting like she was just visiting. But each time, she asked questions. She spoke to old neighbors, elders, and even people who had worked the land. She asked if they remembered her mother's funeral, or what happened after. Many did. Some remembered seeing her aunt sign papers quickly after the funeral. Others had noticed how suddenly Nomvula became wealthy, but never understood why. Slowly, she collected testimonies, voice recordings, notes, photos, small truths that pointed to a big lie. It wasn't easy. Some people were afraid to talk. Some warned her not to stir trouble. Others told her to forgive and move on. But Naledi couldn't. This wasn't just about land. It was about her mother's last gift, her stolen future, and the truth she had carried alone for too long. After 4 years, her case file was thick, full of documents, witness statements, timelines, and proof. She had enough. She visited a trusted lawyer, shared her story, and together they prepared the court papers. Naledi's hands shook when she signed the official complaint. It was happening. Everything she had worked for was real now. Then came the day she returned home, not with tears in her eyes, but with confidence in her step and a court summons in her hand. She wore a simple white shirt, her mother's old necklace, and a look that no longer held fear. As she walked through the village, people stared. Some whispered. Her aunt Nomvula was in the garden when Naledi arrived. She turned, expecting a friendly hello, but instead a man handed her an envelope. She opened it and laughed loudly. She's just a little girl, Nomvula said. She'll lose. But Naledi said nothing. She didn't argue, didn't shout. She simply looked her aunt in the eyes and said, "See you in court." Then she turned and walked away. That moment spread like fire through the village. People who once stayed silent began to talk. Some were afraid, some were proud, but everyone knew Naledi was no longer the quiet girl who had left in the night. She had returned with the law on her side. The court date was set. As it approached, Naledi worked even harder. She reviewed her documents again and again. She practiced answering questions. She sat in on court hearings to understand how things worked in real time. She was nervous, yes, but ready. She had waited years for this moment, and now it was finally here. The girl they had tried to silence was about to speak, not with anger, but with truth. When Nomvula was handed the court papers, she burst out laughing. She waved the envelope in the air and shouted, "She's just a little girl. What does she know about court?" Her voice echoed through the yard as neighbors watched. To her, this was just a joke. She had money, influence, and confidence. She had fooled people for years. She didn't believe for one second that Naledi could win. But deep down, maybe a small part of her felt the fear. Because Naledi wasn't that quiet, scared girl anymore. She had fire in her eyes and facts in her hands. The day court began, the room was packed. Villagers came from far to see what would happen. Some came out of curiosity. Some came out of respect. Some came to see if it was really true, that Naledi was fighting her aunt. When Naledi stood up to speak, even the judge looked surprised. Her voice was calm, but strong. She had everything in order. Documents, timelines, photos, even voice recordings. Her file was thick. Her points were clear. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just told the truth. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised, flipping through the pages. "This is very detailed," he said. Nomvula shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She didn't look as confident anymore. Then the witnesses began to speak. One by one, they stood up for Naledi, the old farmer who used to work the land, the village elder who remembered the funeral, the neighbor who saw Nomvula meeting the lawyer secretly. Every voice added another piece to the puzzle. Then something happened that no one expected. The corrupt lawyer, the one who helped steal the land, was called in. At first, he denied everything, but then, under pressure, he broke down. He had recently been caught in another scam, and now he was ready to talk. In front of everyone, he admitted it. Nomvula had paid him after the funeral to forge documents and hide Naledi's name. The courtroom went silent. People gasped. Even the judge looked shocked. Nomvula tried to speak, but her words stumbled. Her face had turned pale. For 3 long weeks, the case went on. Every day, Naledi returned to court with her head held high. Some days were hard. Some witnesses were nervous. Some questions were sharp. But Naledi stood strong. She had spent years preparing for this moment, and now she was living it. People began to whisper in the village. She might actually win. Nomvula, once so proud, now sat quietly, sweating, holding her handbag tightly. Then came the final day. The courtroom was full. Reporters sat in the back. Even people who had once doubted Naledi were now sitting at the edge of their seats. The judge entered, holding the final ruling in his hand. The room went still. He looked up, took a breath, and said, "After reviewing all evidence and testimonies, this court finds that the land legally belongs to Naledi Dube. All current leases are void. This land was taken through fraud. Justice must be restored." The words hit like thunder. The room exploded in gasps. Some clapped, some cried. Naledi closed her eyes, letting the tears fall. But they were not tears of pain. They were tears of victory. She had done it. After all the silence, the struggle, and the long nights, she had finally won. Nomvula stood up suddenly, her face blank. Then, slowly, she fainted right there in the courtroom. People rushed to help, but the judge simply called for order. Naledi didn't move. She just stood still, watching, breathing. The moment she had imagined for years was now real. Outside the courthouse, people gathered around her. Reporters asked questions. Villagers hugged her. Strangers shook her hand. But Naledi didn't smile for the cameras. She was still soaking in the moment, the weight of it, the power of it. She had fought a system that was not made for girls like her, poor, young, and alone, and she had won. That night, she didn't go to a big celebration. She walked quietly through the village, stopping by her mother's old favourite tree. She sat under it, looking up at the stars, and whispered, "I did it, Mama. I really did it." The wind moved through the branches, soft and calm, as if the earth itself was answering her. Everyone had once told Naledi to let it go, to forget the land, to accept the lies. But she didn't. She chose the hard road, the lonely one. And now, she had shown every girl watching that truth, courage, and patience can break even the strongest chains. Everyone thought Naledi would sell the land. After all the stress, the court fights, the sleepless nights, most people assumed she'd take the money and start over somewhere far away. Some even said, she'll move to the city now, she's done enough. But Naledi had a different dream. This land wasn't just soil and grass to her. It was her mother's last gift, her childhood home, her fight, her story. She didn't want to sell it. She wanted to heal it. So instead of calling real estate agents or buyers, she made a quiet call to a local NGO that supported rural education. And that single call became the start of something incredible. With the help of the NGO, she began drawing plans for a school, not just any school, but one for girls from small villages, just like her. She remembered how hard it was to study, to be taken seriously, to even believe in herself. She wanted to change that for the next generation. She named the school Mama Thembi Academy, after her late mother, who always told her that girls deserve to dream big too. The first building was small, made from bricks donated by local supporters, but it stood strong. Every wall had a purpose, every chair a future. Villagers watched with wide eyes as trucks arrived with supplies. Some were still unsure. They had seen too many broken promises in the past. But Naledi kept showing up, sleeves rolled up, working alongside builders and teachers, laughing with children, planting flowers outside the classrooms. Slowly, people began to believe. They offered to help. Some donated wood, others cleaned the land. And just like that, the community that was once ignored started becoming a part of something bigger. The school opened with just 20 girls. They wore second-hand uniforms and shared textbooks, but their eyes sparkled with hope. Some of them had never been inside a classroom before. Now, they were learning how to read, write, and even use computers. Naledi visited often. She sat in the back of classrooms, helped with lunch, and told her story during assembly. "You are not too small," she told them. "Even when no one believes in you, believe in yourself." But Naledi wasn't done yet. There were still more acres of land, and she knew they could be used for good. She worked with local farmers and agriculture students to turn the remaining land into a sustainable farm. They planted vegetables, fruits, and grains. They used natural methods, collected rainwater, and taught villagers how to care for the crops without chemicals. The farm not only fed the students at the school, it also provided jobs for villagers, including some who once worked under her aunt's harsh rule. Now they worked with pride, knowing their hands were feeding children and helping a brighter future grow. The farm and the school became deeply connected. Kids learned about farming, cooking, and business. Local women began making and selling handmade goods. Teen girls who were once told to just get married young were now learning about science, leadership, and their rights. The energy on the land changed. What was once a place of secrets and stolen dreams became a place of laughter, books, and new beginnings. People from nearby towns began visiting. Some brought their daughters to enroll. Others came just to see it. The school built on land won by a girl who refused to be broken. Reporters returned, not for the courtroom drama this time, but to cover something more powerful, the quiet revolution of a village rising through education and unity. One photo of Naledi sitting on the school steps, surrounded by smiling students in uniforms, went viral. People from all over Africa and beyond shared her story, calling her a symbol of hope. Naledi stayed humble. She didn't care much for fame or praise. What mattered to her was seeing girls raise their hands in class, hearing laughter in the halls, and watching her mother's land bloom again. Not with wealth, but with purpose. She often said, "My aunt took this land for herself, but I built it for everyone." Some villagers who once stayed silent during her struggle came forward and apologized. Naledi forgave them. She believed healing was more powerful than revenge. And when people asked her why she didn't just enjoy her victory and move on, she always answered with a smile, "Because winning is not enough. You have to give others a chance to win too." Today, Mama Thembi Academy stands tall with more classrooms, a growing library, and a kitchen that smells like fresh maize and stew. The farm produces enough to feed the school and sell in the markets, and every time the sun rises over the land, children run across the fields, books in their hands, dreams in their hearts, all because one girl didn't give up, didn't sell out, and chose to plant something far greater than bitterness: hope. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the sun was shining bright, and a large crowd had gathered. The children stood proudly in their new school uniforms, holding small flags and smiling. Naledi stood at the front, holding a pair of scissors, ready to cut the red ribbon in front of the school gate. Reporters surrounded her, asking questions and snapping photos. One reporter asked her what many people had been wondering: "Why didn't you press charges against your aunt for emotional damages after everything she did to you?" Naledi looked at the crowd, then smiled gently. "The biggest punishment," she said, "is watching the girl you tried to break become the woman who lifts others." Those words hit deeply. People clapped, some with tears in their eyes, and when she finally cut the ribbon, the cheers were loud and full of hope. A photo was taken of that exact moment. Naledi, with the scissors, surrounded by joyful young girls, standing proudly on the very land that had once been stolen from her. That image spread like wildfire. Within days, it went viral across Africa, shared by students, leaders, and dreamers. 2 years later, Naledi's powerful journey became a Netflix documentary. Her story didn't just inspire, it changed hearts.